Oregon Health and Science University presents a resource for health science educators. Profiles of health science professionals with disabilities. A nurse with a hearing loss. Molly Jenkins, RN. Ms. Jenkins is currently a registered nurse for the Columbia Regional Hospital, Indiana, and works in the Home Services Department. Ms. Jenkins received her nursing degree from the DePauw School of Nursing in 1993. Currently, she spends 50% of her time doing field visits to patients' homes and 50% of her time as a case manager. Ms. Jenkins experiences a hearing impairment in both ears due to a genetic birth defect. She wore her first hearing aid at age 5.
During nursing school, I was pretty much a first case for my School of Nursing to deal with a hearing impaired student. And we used a lot of the same accommodations that I had used previously, sitting in the front, having lighting, making sure I could see my instructor. They really didn't have too much for me to fall back on, so it was an education experience for me as well as the instructors. They were able to locate a nurse at our training facility who had a hearing impairment, so I had a little bit to gain from her. If there was a sterile procedure being done with masks being worn, trach care, or central line dressing changes, we have handouts. We have step-by-step policies and procedures that will state how to do it, that I could read or have the handout there with me, so that when maybe the nurse was explaining to me the procedure with the mask on, I could follow. And having written information for some reason does help me hear better. I can understand what's being said if I have the same information written before me to read off of. We were a small group. My nursing class, I can't remember the exact size of it, but it was a small group. And we had a lot of closeness within the relationship of the teachers and the students. So it was something I was very easily able to just discuss with them. And since they were aware of the impairment we had occasional evaluations, they would ask me if I was doing okay and if I needed more. My director of nursing was able to locate a nurse at that hospital who was working in a cardiac unit with a hearing impairment. So they allowed me to have clinical time to spend on that area and to talk to that nurse to see what kind of things worked for her. So at the point that I became a professional nurse, I was working a medical surgical floor, and I can't recall having too many problems with my hearing. I don't think it made much of a difference. With my skills, especially with my educational background, my knowledge was a very strong asset for me. And as I mentioned before, the teamwork concept, if I wasn't quite sure if I could hear somebody's breath sounds correctly or thought there might be something else there I wasn't picking up on, I got another nurse, and we compared notes that way. I required a lot of lighting to be able to do lip reading, and as I started out as a night shift nurse, I simply used bathroom lights or hallway lights, not the direct light above the patient's bed, in order to accommodate that. I did have hospital phones, were hearing aid compatible, which certainly made a difference in order to hear orders coming across the phone. And we also used the concept of teamwork in the hospital. And if anything I had a question about, there were other nurses available, which likewise, if they had a question that they needed assistance on, they would come and grab me. So it was genuinely a teamwork concept for us to work together on the floor. At this point, I required the electronic stethoscope. I continued to use a lot of lip reading with my patients in the home. In home care, I have the ability to work pretty much one-on-one with my patients. I don't have the background noises of equipment, call lights going off, nurses, doctors running around, and other disciplines. It's usually myself and the patient alone. There may be one or two family members if they're there for learning, to either learn about the illness or learn how they can help the patient to stay home in their home setting in a safe way. And I think that's been an important adjustment that I have made, that I've gone from a hospital setting more to a quieter setting of home care, because that's happened as my hearing loss has happened and decreased. Home care allows me quiet time in between my visits, which I think for my disability, me in particular, that's very helpful because I have a chance to relax and to get away from the strain of listening for 8.5 straight hours. I have that downtime, and that's been very important for me. I would also not allow myself to work in areas I thought I would be unsafe, as because of my hearing, that I might not be able to react as quickly, and in my own eyes that would limit me from areas like emergency room and also from operating rooms. Because of my reliance on lip reading in the OR, they would be wearing masks, so I wouldn't have that opportunity. I do rely on programmable hearing aids, and the benefit to this type of a hearing aid is that the frequencies I hear the least of, we can program more amplification in those tones so that I don't have amplification of every noise going on around me. And this type of hearing aid that I have made by Resound has a remote control to it, and I simply can press a button to change a program. I have a loud and a soft program. They work in different environmental situations. I also have volume control on this type, and it simply works by pressing a button about a foot away from your ear or closer, and you can adjust your hearing aid as you need. If I'm in a speech portion of the assessment, I certainly can change it if I have a patient that's soft-spoken or a patient who is not wearing their dentures that day. Their facial features are going to be affected by that, and I may not be as successful in lip reading them. So I do tend to turn up the volume on my hearing aids in those kind of situations. What I do use to assist with that is this amplified stethoscope, which is battery operated. It has a high and a low, but it also has a volume control on there. So when I am ready to listen, if it's a sound I may not hear as readily, I can always turn up the volume by the switch. There's a dial on the side of it, and when you're ready to actually use it, you press the button to activate the batteries on the inside. And that allows me to improve my assessment abilities. This stethoscope, when we arranged for it through my hospital, we sent in a copy of my audiogram.
Okay.
And the manufacturers were able to do some type of control setting based on my audiogram. This is an FM system, is what it's called. There's two portions. There's a transmitter and a receiver. The transmitter is more of a microphone type piece. It's worn by the speaker. It's very useful. They use them in courtrooms now, churches, classrooms. I experimented with this back in during my clinical rotation of nursing school. We'd play with it down in the cafeteria to see if I could hear the person across the table speaking to me with all the other noises going on. It has a loop here that's worn around the neck, and there's a lot of variations to this type of equipment. The loop would have to be worn with a hearing aid placed on a telecoil setting, but there are also ones where you can use a regular Walkman's headphone and plug that into it, and then you would have the earpieces in your ear, and that would also work. Essentially, what it does is the microphone picks up just on the person wearing it. So if you're in a large classroom setting with 100, 200 students in a room, this would go straight from your professor to the student wearing it. In the hospital, I had much more of those kind of situations that could occur. And what I would do is just make more frequent supervisory checks on my patients and maintain the use of my eyesight to see that they were okay. Or I also anticipate my patients' needs in the hospital as well as in the home setting. As far as unexpected accidents, things that can't be anticipated, I personally don't have a problem hearing people behind me, especially more mechanical noises. I hear better. Hearing impaired people may have losses in different frequencies. So with mine, where my hearing loss might be in somebody calling out, but I would certainly hear somebody knocking an item over and that mechanical noise of it hitting the floor, or if they were to fall. Again, hopefully I would be anticipating those things and visualizing their safety. Also, if another nurse, when I did work on the floor, if I had a machine going off in another room and the alarm beeping, they may need to pull me and say, I hear that. Or maybe they were visiting the patient in the room next door. And just from working as an employee, if you find something that's wrong, you're going to go in and you're going to fix it yourself rather than track down that person's nurse simply because there's an assignment. In the home care position I am now, I have been a member of the wound care team, and that's been a specialty of mine. I rely on my vision for the wound appearance, and I have a pretty good sense of smell. So I'm able to pick up on odor changes. So one specialty has been wound care. Another specialty has been my interaction with patients. I have very good rapport with the majority of my patients, and as well as co-workers, and I have been found to be a very good person to send in if the patient is difficult or if it's an unsafe home setting that we're evaluating, whether it's even a condition that we can continue sending our staff members into. So I would have to say things other than just my basic nursing skills of hearing and listening with a stethoscope. My other strengths have certainly helped me in my current job. That has varied, and I would say mostly in a positive way. More of them are curious than anything else. When I was younger, a lot of them would be, you're not old enough to have a hearing aid, was the most common reaction. I have found I have a few patients that really enjoy talking to me about it, especially if they have a hearing loss or if they have a family member with a hearing loss. They're also seeking education on how do I use a caption on the TV? Do I have a hearing aid compatible phone? They're seeking any kind of education they can get also. I'd have to say most of it's been positive. They feel that I've done my work, I'm good at what I do, and it doesn't matter that I'm hearing impaired. Elderly population that have been in hearing aids or been hearing impaired for a while, I think they enjoy seeing somebody younger with hearing aids. There can be a lot of frustration with the hearing loss that I get from my patients, or they'll be apologizing, I can't hear. And the minute I say I understand and show them my hearing aids, then I have found that they're more relaxed. They enjoy the visit more. They're not as self-conscious, they're not embarrassed about their own hearing loss. I think a lot of people appreciate the eye contact, and I've had people tell me if we were discussing my hearing loss and maybe I needed to explain why I was asking them to repeat or to speak more loudly, or that I just needed them to be facing me when we were discussing things, they might mention to me that they could tell I cared, or they felt that I cared more or had more of an interest with them because I was maintaining that eye contact with them. So by being more visual and looking at those nonverbal cues, I have discovered I actually can get more information out of my patients than relying strictly on communication and what they want to tell me. Give them a chance, because you don't really know unless they've had the opportunity to look to see if there is any equipment that will help them to succeed, and until they have the chance to experiment with it, you don't know. I think it's very sad if anyone is denied access based on their original application that might state that they have a disability, because I don't think you know the true value of that disability until you're in a working role, be it a clinical of some sort. We're less than perfect, and when you're sick, you feel less than perfect. So I do feel that it just makes us more real. A lot of times we hear comments that doctors and nurses are placed a little bit higher on the podium by these patients. I think that mostly comes from the loss of control people experience when they go into a hospital type setting, because they're pretty much told when they can eat and drink and do whatever. And especially in the home situation, I just think it just makes us seem more real to them.
Health Sciences Faculty Education Project, a resource for health science educators. Project Staff. Project Director, Joanne Sowers, Ph.D. Project Coordinator, Martha R. Smith. Dissemination Coordinator, Lisa Ferris, M.E.D. Project Administrative Assistant, Tina Campbell. Additional support provided by Clark Hochstetler, M.A. Narrator, Z. Boone. For project information, please contact Martha R. Smith, Center on Self-Determination, Oregon Health and Science University, 3608 Southeast Powell Boulevard, Portland, Oregon, 97202. Telephone 503-232-9154, extension 131. Email smitmart@ohsu.edu. These videotapes were partially supported by grant PR/3P333A900-51 from the Department of Education, Office of Post-Secondary Education. Copyright 2002 by Joanne Sowers and Martha R. Smith. All rights reserved. No part of this material may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without prior consent of the copyright owners.